Welcome everyone who's joining us for the workshop on delivering open data. We'll wait a minute or so for a few more people to sign in, and then we'll get started. Okay, let's begin the workshop. And Fariel, would you do the honors?
Yes, thank you so much. Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to the second session of the Fundamentals of Open Statistical Systems. My name is Farial Ahmed. I am from the UN Statistics Division and I coordinate the Data for Now initiative at the UN Statistics Division. In the last session, we covered what steps are necessary to meet the open data standards, and we had a lot of interesting presentations on covering the key principles. Towards the end of the session, we also had a poll that showed there was a variation in knowledge among participants when it comes to open data, some not even knowing where to start and many lacking information. And we hope that the last week and this week will help colleagues to get started and give some ideas and get some ideas and insights that you can implement in the work that you're doing. In this session, we will cover how NSOs can effectively disseminate data through open data platforms. Particularly, the session will cover the functionality and management of national data portals to ensure that they meet user need in making data findable and accessible. We will hear a lot of insights from the speakers in the session today on what are the common problems, how to make the data findable and accessible, and what are some of the capabilities that we need to look out for when developing open source data portals. We also welcome throughout the session, if you could leave your any questions that you have under Q&A. And we also welcome you if in the chat you could introduce yourself, where you're from, in which organization you're coming from, so that we know who is in the room. And with that, I pass on to Eric to get us started. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fariel. And very, very happy to be here with you all. I'm Eric Swanson. I'm the Director of Research at Open Data Watch, and I'm joined by colleagues from Open Data Watch and from the UN Statistics Division today to present this workshop. Throughout, we hope to hear from you and answer your questions and to share your experience. And you can respond anytime to anything you hear by typing your questions and comments using the Q&A tab, as Fariel just mentioned. I should also say that the session is being recorded, and when the workshop is over, we will share the recording and the slideshow with all participants. Let's look at the agenda for today. And Fariel's given you an overview of what we'll be discussing. We're looking at how well-designed and well-managed data portals can make data more accessible, findable, and usable. So as we do so, we'll be guided by the paper on Principles and Guidelines for National Reporting Platforms that was presented by the UN Statistics Division to the 50th session of the Statistical Commission. After reviewing those principles, we ask what are the functions of a data portal that can make it most effective in delivering open data. Luis Gonzalez Morales from the Statistics Division will speak about his experience in building and managing effective data portals. And then we will shift our focus to a user's perspective, and we will hear from Yema Thompson of the Sierra Leone News Agency about why access to open data is so important for her work. And in the final section, we'll look at some of the tools available to data portal managers to improve their portals and to better serve the needs of their users. Now, before we begin, we'll try a quick poll through the audience to gauge your experience with data portals. You can see the poll in front of you, and you can simply click on your responses. We'll let those build up for a moment, and then we'll move on to our next section. I see some people clicking, responding, yes and no. Excellent. Jameson, let's leave the poll up and move to the next slide while people are responding. And I've introduced myself, so we can even go to the slide after that. Thank you. So last week, exactly a week ago, we discussed the fundamentals of open data, what constitutes open data from the perspective of a national statistical office. We discussed policies that make government data and official statistics open by default, and we heard from national statisticians who've been involved in implementing open data for their agencies. As a reminder, open data are machine readable and in non-proprietary formats. They're accompanied by metadata that describe the data. Users are able to select and download the data for themselves, and they are accompanied by an open license which grants unrestricted access and use of those data. Free access, I should add. So today we're going to be discussing data portals and their role in making data open and available. In this digitized online world, well-designed data portals are the most effective way we can find to deliver open data to users. Okay, let's take a quick look at what the poll has shown us. Jameson, can you pop that up again? There it is. So we have 3/4 of our participants are publishing data through a data portal. That's great. We'll have lots of reasons to exchange ideas about what an effective portal is like. And are the data in the portal open? Well, half say yes, the quarter say no, and the rest say somewhat. So plenty to talk about here, but it's good to have people involved who have experience in this area and experience to share. So we'll look forward to hearing from you as we go forward. Jameson, you want to move us to the next? Thank you. And so, as I said a moment ago, the United Nations Conference on National Reporting and Dissemination Platforms published a set of principles and guidelines for SDG indicator reporting in 2018. And That paper articulated 4 principles to guide the development of national data portals. Although the principles and their recommendations were specifically addressed to SDG reporting, they're applicable to all national reporting platforms or data portals. And throughout, if we say platform, we mean portal, and if we say portal, we mean platform. But we will distinguish data portals and their full functionality from simple websites with links to a file or a yearbook or a paper and that sort of thing. So the principles called for clear institutional arrangements and management. Responsibility for the development, the implementation, the management of data portals should be clearly established by laws, regulations, and operating procedures, including coordination mechanisms within the national statistical system. So the idea is that this is a shared enterprise that is able to gather information from across the statistical system. The principle of fitness for purpose says that the scope and features of the data portal should be established in consultation with all stakeholders and users, and we'll emphasize consultation with users throughout. They should address the priority needs and the requirements of subnational, national, regional, and global monitoring and reporting. Sustainability is very important. In planning for a data platform, consideration must be given to internal and external resources and the capacity over the medium and long term to sustain the platform. And finally, interoperability and statistical standards. The components of the platform should follow international and national statistical standards and best practices. And in particular, the standards should support data harmonization and exchange across different stages of statistical production and across institutions, including common data structure definitions and code lists and those things that really make a data set interoperable. You'll hear more about all 4 of these principles as we go forward today. So let's talk briefly about what is an open data portal. There are many kinds of data portals. You may be familiar with some of them, such as PXWeb, the .stat suite, or OpenSDG. And you may also be using yourselves the Open Data for Africa portal to publish some of your national data. What they have in common is that they are web-based applications that organize data from one or more sources. And we can distinguish data portals from ordinary web pages that, as I said a moment ago, may be quite useful for allowing users to have access to a particular report or a table or even a graphic visualization. But generally speaking, the arrangements like that don't give users interactive access to data that a data portal can provide. So the aim of a data portal is to facilitate discovery and utilization of data, and in that way foster innovation, transparency, and collaboration. And unlike flat files listed on web pages, they offer tools for searching, filtering, and downloading data sets, often in various formats, and provide other tools to allow users to explore and utilize data for research, analysis, policy making, everything that we want to do with our data. Now, having said that, not all portals, even if they're called a data portal, live up to the standards that we would like to set. And a couple of years ago, Paris 21 and Open Data Watch conducted a review of national data platforms in low and middle income countries. And we were looking at their adherence to the UN principles and guidelines. What that report found was that almost a third of the countries did not have a national data portal at all. In countries where data portals were present, adherence to the principles and guidelines was uneven, and although portals perform better on some of the guidelines, many are far from being fully consistent. And here are some of the problems listed on the screen that we found, including data portals that weren't linked to the NSO's principal website. So somebody coming to the NSO looking for data would not have gotten to the portal. And they often were of limited scale. They lacked multilingual capacity to support users who were not in the main language. They often had barriers to use by people with disabilities, lacked feedback mechanisms. Frequent downtime is a problem, and lack of support for other kinds of open standards. So we won't discuss all these issues in this workshop, but in the following presentations, we'll examine how statistical offices can design and build more effective portals. And now I'd like to stop talking, and I'd like to invite my colleague, Jameson Henninger, to talk about the important attributes and functions of data portals. And as a reminder, there is a Q&A tab on your screens, and you can use that to post questions to any of the speakers or to your colleagues, and we will be checking on the Q&A and then bringing out those questions in the Q&A session a little bit later on. Thanks, and Jameson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning, everyone. So today in my section, I'd like to show you some examples of open data portals from a few countries and some of the most important features that we see. But to start, I really want to summarize just exactly, what makes an open data portal and some of the, more technical ways that we think about, open data. So first, open data portal, the access to the data in the portal should be free and unrestricted. So this means both that users don't have to pay to use the portal, but also that access is unrestricted in what users can do with the data in that portal. So what does that mean? That means the data should be made available under an open data license. So in our last workshop, we did go through data licenses a lot more, and that material will be available for you to reference. But let's just look at a quick example from a country. So here I'm looking at Senegal's open data platform. They use a portal developed by the African Development Bank. So you might see this type portal in many other countries. And at the bottom of their portal, they actually link to their open data license right here. So this will take us to the text of the license. And so it's very visible, very easy for users to know exactly where it is. And so this is really key. Not only is the data license there, but it's easy to read, easy to find. And so there's no reason for users to have to search around elsewhere on your website to find it. Some open data platforms have different licenses for different data sets within the license, and that's also fine. The key thing is that a license exists and it's easy to find. You would be surprised how many open data portals that have open data in the name of the portal that don't actually have an open data license. So really, really key to remember. Another aspect of open data portals is that users can remain anonymous while accessing the data, right? So this means that users are not required to give any information about themselves as a prerequisite to accessing or downloading the data. So this means you cannot require users to create an account, for instance, in order to download or see the information in your portal. So this might be surprising for people to hear because many portals have the ability for users to create accounts. And so it's not that this feature is inherently bad, right? Is it required for users to do this in order to access the data? That is what is bad open data practice, and that is what I'm flagging here. So I want to show you an example from Singapore's portal about how they go about collecting a little information about their users without mandating it and without making it required in order to access the data. So if I go to Singapore's data portal, when you first enter, you will see this screen, which invites you to share more information about yourself as a user. So here they're just asking you to disclose what kind of user you are. Am I a member of the public? Am I a researcher? Am I a government officer? Right? But I can always click out of it and, opt out if I don't want to, right? So it's not asking me any identifying information like my email address or my name or anything. And also a really cool feature here is once I make a selection, okay, well, it didn't work in that instance, but generally once you make a selection on that portal, it actually redirects you and says, hey, here are some pages on our website that might be of interest of you as this type of user. Okay, third, the data in that portal should be made available in machine readable and non-proprietary formats. This is what makes file format open. We discussed this at length in our last workshop, so that information is available to you, but feel free to ask questions in the chat if you have need more information. But generally, XLSX, CSV files are some of the more common formats we see in open data portals. Also, data portals should include machine readable open metadata, right? So reference metadata that describes the data and its sources, really, really critical to have for any accompanying any open data sets. And is really crucial for data openness as it allows users to better understand your data and promotes interoperability between your data sets. So portals make it a lot easier to publish your metadata in these standardized formats and in these interoperable ways. So I can show you a quick example just from Singapore, since we're already in their platform. And, I can drop this link in the chat since it's a little hard to see here. But what you'll find is that in their portal, they have a whole tab of metadata on the far right side, right? And so at any point, I can reference the metadata while I'm looking at this data set. I can download the metadata, right? And if you look at every aspect, every section of the metadata, it's essentially their template, right, that you can see. So they make the metadata and the data easy to reference at the same time and easy to download that metadata in a machine readable format. So these are also very key. So the next few slides, what I actually want to focus on is this last aspect. And this is that open data portals often have these design features that facilitate greater access, data sharing, and use. So what we've been reiterating in these workshops is that one of the main goals of open data is to ultimately get people to use your data. That's how your data has impact. That's how it, maintains value. Right. And so data portals are great tools in achieving better use of your data and engaging with users. So this is why we see many open data initiatives include the creation of an open data portal. They make it easy to sort, download, analyze data, all these things, So as I go through these next examples, I do want to highlight that many of the data portals I show are going to be using open source software. So if I show an example that does, I will highlight that for you. And so many NSOs, government agencies use open source software for their portals because it's free for anyone to use the source code and modify it for their own purposes. So, and these platforms have robust communities of these user developers online that are continuously enhancing the software. So if you have the technical capacity on your team, these can be good options. So it's not necessary to use open source software to create an open data portal. That doesn't affect its openness or anything, but there are benefits. And so some of the examples you'll see using a web app called PX Web, which is made by Statistics Sweden, specifically for the dissemination of official statistics. You'll see an example from StatSuite, which is created by the group from OECD. And there's another open source option, which I don't have an example of, but it's OpenSCG, used for SCG data, created by UK's Office for National Statistics and the Center for Open Data Enterprise. So I will flag these as we go through, but I just want to mention that for those that are not currently publishing data through an open data portal, but looking for some softwares that they might want to use. So one crucial element of any data portal is how easy is it for users to find the data they want in your portal. So let's look at one example from Hong Kong, because this can mean many different things. So at the very basic level, all data portals have some kind of categorization of the different types of data sets. And so making sure this categorization makes sense to your users is really key. So in this case, right, we can see the different categories: housing, population, finance, law and security, right? They seem pretty average categories. But in many cases, we come to these portals and we see very particular niche categories that we often wonder if they maybe mean something different in the context of that country, because they don't quite match with what the general categories of, as a user, we would expect to find, right? So that's at the very basic level. But here, they do more than that. So this is Hong Kong. They have a search query that allows word searches that you can then filter by different categories, by different providers, different formats, and also if it's available via the API that they have on the website, right? So lots of different ways to search and filter and find the data that you need. Another cool feature here with our search bar is that as you type, it will start suggesting data sets, right? So data sets that you might be looking for. So if a user isn't quite sure exactly what they're looking for or what they're expecting to find, this can be helpful. And lastly, on search and queries, I just want to reiterate how important it is to test your search functionality. One fun activity I like to do in workshops and countries is pick particular data sets and ask statisticians to find their own data sets on their open data portals and see if they're able to find all the information. And generally, they're not able to find it or all of it, right? So here, for example, I'm searching up data sets on producer price index, right? And if I do that search, right, I will find a number of different data sets here. But what happens when I search by the acronym PPI is when I use the acronym PPI, I actually don't get any search hits. So I get some data sets on, you can't really read it, but social work for free primary institutions. But all those data sets on producer price indexes have now completely disappeared. So maybe that would be important for the developers of the system to know that, hey, when people are trying to look for these data sets, when they use some of these common acronyms, right, I'm not able to find the data. So testing your search queries is really just as important as setting them up in the first place. Okay, another basic feature that I want to go over is the ability to filter and custom the level of disaggregation in a data set. Really, the value of data in your portal is going to come from that disaggregation. And when users come into their data portal, they're generally looking for some specific level of disaggregation, whether they're trying to compare different geographic regions to each other or men and women to each other, for instance. So let's look at an example from Bangladesh. Bangladesh, they use Statistics Sweden's open source PX web platform. So if you look at any of those platforms, they'll look fairly similar. If I go to specific data sets under health, you'll see that I can see exactly what level of disaggregation, geographic, categorical, and so forth, that is, I'm going to find in that data set before I even open it. So it helps me as a user decide which data set do I want to open, do I want to explore a little bit more. Right, and this is coming directly from that metadata. So having this robust metadata in your system is really going to allow you to feature a lot more information about data sets. And then once I'm in the portal, in the data set itself, I'm able to select different levels of disaggregation, right? Maybe I don't want every single 5-year age group between 1 and 80 plus, right? And I can select which, sex, which geographic areas, and so forth. So giving people the option to select what slivers or what subset of data they want is really going to make your portal much more useful to users, because they can go in, get exactly what they want, and then use that data for whatever purpose they intend. Okay, my last two slides are going to go over some of the more advanced features that we see in portals. And so to do this, I am going to go back to Singapore's data portal. And so this is just a standard random data set I pulled from their portal. And so some of the features that can be really helpful to users is just being able to change how the table looks, right? So these are kind of more advanced features, like are they constructing the table within the system, right? And you can change different types of the ways you want the numbers to be appear. You can change, how the table looks, right? And one really cool feature that we really don't see in any other portal is this ability to do a bulk download or compare tables. So if I add this to a compare page, right, I can actually see these data sets side by side. So they're just kind of these cool advanced features that maybe are only applicable to a certain subset of users, but different things that you can kind of explore as you get more advanced in the type of features that your data portal provides. Okay, lastly, and something that like a lot of portals like to focus on, because I mean they're visually appealing, they draw your attention. These are data visualizations. So let's look at just a couple examples from some countries that tackle data visualizations in two different ways. So the first one I'm showing you from the Maldives, and they use a stat suite platform, right? So this is the OECD developed open source platform. And for any of the data sets in the platform, they have options to convert it to different types of charts, right? So it's built into the system, and I can further customize this and the way I want the chart to look, the height, the width. I can change which values appear here, and so forth. So there's a lot of different customizations here in terms of the charts, and then different types of graphics you can create, right? So that's built into the system. It doesn't involve any extra work on you to develop. And then versus this is an example from Denmark. And in Denmark, they have landing pages for many of their more popular indicators, where they give a summary of like what's going on recently with that indicator. And then if you scroll down, we have a number of pre-made graphics, interactive graphics, where users can see some of the key changes in that indicator. And the really cool thing here is that even though these are pre-made graphics, right, it links back to the data set. So it's kind of like a teaser for users. Hey, look at some of the interesting things you can find in our platform. And then, right, if you want to know more, takes you back to this data set, right? And so here is the platform for the data portal itself, where I can make my selections and look more into the data in more detail. Okay, so just to summarize, these are some of the key features we've seen in some of our favorite data portals. And we'll be sure to share these examples and many more when we share the slides for this presentation. And hopefully these will give you some ideas about what you can accomplish in your own portals. Thank you.
Thank you, Jameson. And now I'm very happy to introduce my colleague. Luis and I have worked together for a number of years. Luis Gonzalez Morales is the chief of the Data Innovation Section at the UN Statistics Division, and his group supports capacity building and data dissemination and innovation throughout the UN system. He's recently been working on the development of the new UN data dissemination platform. So he's going to speak from direct experience himself with wrestling with the implementation of a data portal in a large, sophisticated statistical system. And before Louis speaks, just a reminder that the Q&A tab is available to post questions that you'd like to hear further responses on. There will be a Q&A session following Luis, but this is a good time to start putting in your queries, and we will process them as we go along. I also saw that people are using the chat to communicate with each other, and that's great. Go ahead and continue to do that. But if you want questions posted to any of the presenters, click on the Q&A button and then type them in. So thanks. And now, Luis, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. I hope you can hear me well, and thank you for everyone for joining this seminar and the opportunity to share some of the experiences that we have been gathering over the last few years as we move in our journey to modernize our data dissemination platforms ourselves in the UN Statistics Division. So what I wanted to do in this session was to share some reflections based on our experience when we go from practice to from theory to practice. Now, I think following the very good presentations in the earlier webinar and today on the principles and the examples, I wanted to just provide an additional set of reflections of what has turned out to be important for us in this journey. So 3 things I want to highlight as top of mind for us, or lessons learned. The first thing is the crucial importance of focusing on user needs to design and build data platforms that are that in order for these platforms to be more likely to be actually used and trusted. So the importance of understanding what users are actually looking for helps us prioritize where to invest our limited resources, and where to put our efforts. And while it's important to define the platform's long-term purpose, to define who are our target users and what is the success criteria to guide these decisions that we make day to day as we develop these platforms, it is also important to break this into manageable phases, to break this complex process into small chunks that we can work with. So an important thing that I think is necessary is to avoid trying to launch a fully featured platform all at once, but to rather aim to deliver core value to users early and continuously. So this means prioritizing which features users need most, and building in short cycles, testing with users, gathering feedback, and adjusting continuously. So that is part of being agile. Avoiding also over-engineering, meaning focusing on the functionality that delivers true value instead of all kinds of features that are not necessarily as important to users. And this is also another lesson is closely related to the principle of national ownership, or ownership in general, by the organization that is launching and maintaining a data platform. So to be able to really own these platforms, we need to invest in our internal capacities, our internal skills, so that we can maintain sustainably these platforms. And in the current scenario that we all are going through of very limited resources, it's also important to avoid building from scratch, adopting proven open source solutions, like the ones Jamison has mentioned, or the .stat Suite, the PXWeb, etc. There are a number of very solid open source initiatives that offer a good starting point. And it's important to when we decide to move into those solutions, to tap into the technical support that their community brings with them. So not only use the software itself, but there is a community of users around them that can help us make our platform sustainable and have the internal capacity to maintain them. So the importance of the open source community. Now I want to go a bit deeper into the focus on user needs. So our users tend to rely on platforms that facilitate their work. The speed and ease at which they can find and access the data they need is a key factor in their decision to visit and stay on a platform. So if a platform is slow, if it is difficult to navigate, users may become frustrated and look for other alternatives. So users really will go to the platforms that meet their needs in an easy way. So we also need to ensure that users have the confidence that the data they find is trustworthy and fit for purpose. So users prefer platforms that are maintained by reputable organizations which provide clear, easy to understand explanations about the nature, the limitations, the proper use of the data. And this trust must be earned and maintained. As misinformation spreads easily, statistical platforms must make credibility and transparency and explainability central to what the user experience, to the user experience that we design. Now, we are in times of very fast change in technology and change in the behavior of users. So nowadays, most people begin their information seeking journey through platforms like Google or other search engines, not on the homepage of our statistical office. So tools like ChatGPT, for instance, have raised expectations for intuitive, personalized, and responsive interfaces, even for public data. And many users want quick, direct responses to specific questions, not to browse through data sets or PDFs or extract insights themselves. So they are increasingly expecting to interact with data platforms that use plain language queries, not technical filters of codes. Static tables are no longer enough. Users expect dynamic visualizations, help to interpret trends and patterns at a glance. And many platforms are in need of evolving to this type of functionality. So if our data platforms are difficult to navigate, to understand, users will abandon them and turn to unofficial sources, and that's a big risk, I think, that we need to consider and act to mitigate. To understand the user needs and the behavior, so that is what I have been sort of trying to bring home this message. We need to ask questions about what users actually do with the platform. First, how do they navigate? As Jameson was already hinting to, we spend a lot of time with our user research exercises and focus groups and interviews to try to understand how users navigate the site, how they click through the categories, whether they jump straight to search, what type of search, what type of filters or keywords do they use, and which of our options go untouched now. So which of the facilities and affordances that we give to users in our platforms are actually used and which ones are not. So that requires a lot of research. That requires analysis and evidence gathering, and we also need to understand how users evaluate the content that they are presented. So what tells them that an item is trustworthy or relevant? No, do they rely on metadata? Do they rely on timestamps, on sources? And how do they spot or deal with duplicates or inconsistencies in the data, what is confusing about the data that we present, and look at how they compare their options. No, there's importance of titles, of summaries, of preview tools. How do they retrieve the items? Do they want full downloads? Do they just want specific sections, etc.? So this is type of research that we find is very, very important for us to make decisions. And then that we need to bring down to specific principles, no, that has led us to come down to specific principles. No, we talked already. My colleagues already talked about data discoverability. I want to straight to emphasize 2 points about the importance of simplicity and the importance of convention over configuration. So those are 2 things that we have learned over the process of developing UN data, or the modernization of UN data. So it is important to keep the interface simple. Users shouldn't have to wrestle with the interface. Their energy should go to understanding the data and not decoding the menus or figuring out how to write a query with a complex syntax. And it's also important for users not to be overwhelmed with too many settings, too many options. Good platforms have smart defaults and resist adding complexity unless it's truly necessary. And so our journey has led us to find some priorities. No? So first, as I mentioned at the beginning, small wins, long-term gains. So start with very specific functionalities, a minimal viable product that uses as much as possible community tools, and expand on them incrementally. A phased approach to developing our solutions. Very important is to continuously continuously invest in staff capacity. So invest in training, in peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, to build our internal expertise, to design, to develop, to maintain, and sustain our platforms. And seek for us. Again, in this context of very limited resources, very fast technological change, it has proven to be vital to have strategic partnerships, to engage with other international organizations, with the academic community, scientific community of data users, with the open data community, to access the technical expertise, to access also financial support to maintain our platforms. And so 2 more slides I have on internal capabilities, and these are 2 things that I believe we often neglect when we are as statisticians planning for our data dissemination systems. So I want to emphasize the importance to have a little bit of a mindset shift and re-evaluate the importance of the data engineering capabilities, not as a separate function, but as a core or auxiliary function, but as a core function in our business processes. So the staff in our organizations, in statistical organizations, need to be conversant with modern tools and modern languages for data processing. So Python, R, SQL, all these things are really crucial, and not the remit of just a selected few support teams, but it has to be part of our core work now, all across the organization. We need to bring data from multiple systems, so people need to understand how these processes work, how the data flows for data integration, for data quality assurance, and so on, is implemented in practice. And we also need to be aware of standards and methods for handling these data flows, these data pipelines, and not only the statistical methods and standards that we have traditionally used to, but also the industry standards beyond the statistical community of the standards that our users work with. And we need to have processes that are transparent, that are well documented and easy to maintain. So that means focus on simplifying and automating. So that's on data engineering. Another part of that is also neglected often or comes as a second thought or afterthought is the skills related to site reliability engineering. So we need to keep our dissemination platforms running smoothly and reliably once they have been launched. No? So it's not only about developing and launching them, but also to keep them working properly. So we need to have capacity to develop automated systems to monitor the health of the platforms so that when there are any problems, they are detected, to automate the tools, to automate the processes for testing, for deploying new versions of the software, publishing new versions of the data, and so on. And we also need to be able to design systems that can document their health and send automated alerts and so on. So this aspect of maintainability is really important at the engineering level as well. And I think my next and final slide is just a bit looking forward now. So when we embarked in this project of modernizing UN data, we saw that the tide is changing in terms of technology and user expectations. And now this is really at the forefront in all discussions that we have in the statistical community. You know, the AI disruption. And so one of the key challenges that we have now in the statistical community is not only making our data open, but also to make it AI ready, meaning that this data that comes from official, verifiable, trusted sources can be used by the new systems that are around. So that means that through metadata that is complete but also machine readable and machine actionable, these systems can cite and verify the sources of official statistics, that we can ensure that whatever outcomes they produce are fully traceable to the original sources, and that our data is accessible and findable by these systems that work translating natural language queries into results for the users. So the ability also to learn our data with the multitude of other resources around unstructured documents and contextual information. So that requires working now on the platforms that are used not only by human agents, but by machine agents. So it's the next challenge that we are starting to tackle. So with this, I just want to thank you for your attention, and happy to continue the conversation, and share any of our experiences and learn from your experiences as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. That's you've covered a tremendous amount of material here, and again, I encourage everyone who's listening to ask questions now or Later, we'll also give you contacts information for Luis. Clementina has asked in the Q&A whether Open Data Watch facilitates technical sessions on portal development. And the simple answer is, I'm afraid, no. We're not technical experts in the implementation of data portals. But as you've heard, Luis is, and his group does support capacity building activities for data dissemination. So again, we'll give you contact information both with us and Luis, and if we can help you find technical support for your portal development, we'd certainly be happy to do so, or find other experts who can provide guidance.
Excellent. Thank you.
Luis, question for you also, as you finished up talking about being AI ready. Are current open source platforms AI ready in your opinion, or what else needs to be done to make them so?
I would say we are not there yet. What is really important for this AI readiness is that the data is understandable and actionable by machines. And that all comes down to machine readable metadata. So I think there's still a lot of opportunities to improve how we present the metadata in a form that is consumable by these newer technologies. So what I think is important in our statistical community, and there is a lot of discussion around this already, so we are not the only ones thinking about this, and there are very good experiences. What is very important is that we start to look into a broader set of standards. So we all have been moving, I think, very successfully into the implementation, say, of SDMX. And that's a very important step, but or DDI, for instance. But we need to look into a broader set of standards, interoperability at the semantic level, thinking about technologies like knowledge graphs, etc. So we need to develop those tools in our platforms, and I think that's a very exciting area of work for the next few years.
Okay, thank you so much. And one more quick question, and then we will move on to our next speaker. But I was thinking, Jameson, in your work for the Open Data Inventory, you're often hunting across the web for data from specific countries and on specific topics. I wonder if you can say anything more about the the virtues of one-stop shopping for data versus the hunt and search version.
Yeah, thanks for adding that. Yes, we look at in the latest open data inventory that's going to be launched soon, 197 countries. So we're looking for data, and we're very familiar with many open data platforms. And what we see happen in a lot of countries is that there's too many options of too many different data portals, and it's not very clear what the purpose of that portal is in terms of, as a user, why would I go to this portal versus that portal? And so in many cases, I know it makes sense to have different portals for different purposes, but making sure that that's communicated to users, because often what we see happen is either there's portals and it's unclear which you go to, and maybe they have duplicate information, right, or overlapping information. And so that is one common issue. But even for the platforms that there is a one-stop shop, and it is clear where to go to find the data. Once you're on the portal, it can be very difficult to find the information in there. So really, leaning into the user experience, getting the feedback from users and so forth is really going to be clear to some of these through some of these activities. So even though Open Data Watch doesn't offer technical workshops on how to implement some of these technical aspects of data portals, we do provide a lot of guidance from the user perspective of how you can make some of these improvements. So we can share some of those resources with the slides as well.
Great, thank you. And you are providing kind of a lead into the next session, which is to talk much more now about the user experience, and that will enlarge on some of the remarks that Luis has already introduced concerning knowing your user and knowing their needs. But I thought it would be useful now to listen to somebody who's a real data user and uses it in her work and uses it to facilitate, to share knowledge with the rest of the world through the Sierra Leone News Agency. So, Yema, let me invite you to turn on your microphone and to talk to us about your experience. And keeping it as quick as possible, I think I should warn everyone that we probably will run over in this session, and I hope that you'll all be able to stay with us through to the end. But in the meanwhile, Yema, go ahead and welcome.
Thank you very much, Eric. And again, I really love the presentations from Louis and Jameson. It speaks so much to what's the ideal for an open data portal. But specifically, I will zero in on the challenges and opportunities in using open data portals in Sierra Leone, giving you my experience as a journalist in Sierra Leone. So as a journalist, and especially in an era of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, it is very important for us to be able to access not only open data, but credible open data to support investigative reporting and evidence-based storytelling. And also to help us with our fact-checking by verifying facts and also having access, easy and transparent access to economic, social, and governance data. These drives meaningful discussion and policy reforms, which as a journalist and an editor-in-chief, I aim to achieve. So here in Sierra Leone, we have several data platforms, but I'll just go through the key data platforms that we navigate here. At Stat Sierra Leone, we have the Stat Sierra Leone Open Data portal, and we also have the Ministry of Finance portal, and also some sectors, including the education sector and trade sector, also have data platforms that we navigate. And we also access international data repositories, including the World Bank, UNDP, African Development Bank, and the Sierra Leone Data Portal, which is hosted by the African Development Bank. But I think Louis and Jameson have spoken a lot about the challenges, especially Jameson spoke about some of the challenges that data portals have, and this is also not unique to us in Sierra Leone. We also have, the challenges that I face as a journalist is that some of the portals have limited search functionalities, and also when you want to access data, there's scattered data sets across multiple platforms, so it means you have to spend hours trying to navigate through all the platforms to access the data that you want. And again, my colleagues complain about that they are unaware of where the data is or the availability of data portals. And also here in Sierra Leone, most of the journalists I work with, the correspondents in the news agency, for example, lack the skills to interpret data. Again, we still have the prevalence of PDFs instead of machine-readable formats in some of the portals that we have. And so it's like Jameson said, this should be an effortless process, but it's becoming more challenging to access data because of the prevalence of PDFs. And then there is limited user feedback mechanism, so we cannot even give our feedback on except, for example, If you have a direct contact with some of these agencies, then you can call them and tell them the challenges that you're facing. But if not, you don't have any access to provide the feedback that is needed. And then again, there's a challenge, like I said earlier, many users are not available of data portals. So more and more open data initiatives need to be promoted, because that's a real challenge. But with all of these challenges, there are opportunities. Opportunities abound, and one of the opportunities is for us. We think they should revive and expand the Sierra Leone Open Data Portal. This was an existing portal which has faced a lot of challenges, but this is a portal that has been widely popularized, and we can leverage the African Development Bank's Open Data Platform to enhance national and regional dissemination, and also improve its features to include the SDG reporting, national summary data page, and interactive maps and dashboards. So that's one recommendation. The second recommendation is I think we need to strengthen the Sierra Leone open data and free data sets, to also facilitate public access to a wide range of other economic, social, and demographic data, and also streamline the process for requesting specific data sets to support evidence-based reporting and evidence-based decision-making. My third recommendation is to expand the micro data access for research and development. Yes, thanks to Statistics Sierra Leone, we now have a micro data policy which allows researchers and institutions to access data sets securely. But also, it's also important that they simplify the application procedure for accredited research institutions to enable them to access microdata for statistical analysis. The fourth opportunity here is so we need to develop a sustainable model for frequent updates to the Sierra Leone data portal, and also establish clear terms of use to guide data accessibility, ensure transparency, and responsible usage. And more importantly, and this is, I think, what Jameson also alluded to, is to foster collaboration with other government agencies, development partners, and even civil society to enhance data collection and sharing. Finally, as a media practitioner, I think there's an opportunity for increased collaboration with the media for open data initiatives. If we, for example, Statistics Sierra Leone and the media through a partnership with Paris 21, we have had 2 joint workshops which have strengthened partnerships to ensure around agricultural data, to ensure accountability and public trust. And also, we think the collaboration with the media will amplify the reach and impact of open data through joint efforts with Statistics Sierra Leone and other stakeholders. And this will promote the benefits of open data in driving informed decision-making and innovation. And the media can help to encourage wider engagement and attract new collaborations. Thank you.
Oh, so thank you so much, Emma. What a great review of everything that we've just been discussing. And I really do hear the urgency in your voice for making data more accessible and more open. I'm going to ask my colleague Amelia Pittman now to come forward and talk about methods and tools that are available to enhance user engagement and outreach. Amelia, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Eric. So if we can go to the next slide. So an open statistical system is an inclusive one that considers the needs of all users at every stage of the data value chain. This also applies to design, development, and operation of a data portal. So the UN principles, the guidelines for platforms recommend a user-centric approach to the design and management of data portals. Essentially, this means understanding what users need from the data portal and ensuring that it meets those needs. So how do we understand what users need in order to ensure a user-centric approach? Well, the first step is to include users as an essential part of the development of the data portal. This includes consulting with them at the beginning stages of development to understand what their priorities and workflows are. And then they can provide initial feedback on prototypes and test early versions so that the portal can be improved and refined to ensure that it meets their needs in practice. Once the portal has been developed, users can provide ongoing feedback through a range of mechanisms that we describe here. Each of these provides qualitative information on what their needs and experiences are. But this will also need to be paired with quantitative data. It's possible to attain quantitative data on user needs through analyzing web traffic. The data portal website should collect anonymous data on users and what they access when they use the portal. In the next slide, we'll look in more detail at how web analytics can be used to understand user needs. So web traffic provides some basic anonymized information about an open data portal's visitors. This information on users and their behavior can make it possible to prioritize what content to highlight or improve access to. It also guides outreach and communication strategies and ultimately supports evidence-based decision-making for portal design improvements. Here we see a basic set of indicators about a data portal's users that web analytics can provide. The number of visitors measures how many people are accessing the portal within a given time period. And this helps assess overall interest in the portal and whether outreach efforts are driving traffic to the portal. The number of page views counts how many times users load a page on the portal. This can indicate which data sets or sections are most popular and help identify high demand content. Bounce rate shows the percentage of visitors who leave the site after viewing only one page. So they arrive and immediately leave. A high bounce rate could indicate difficulty in navigation or irrelevant content, or users just not finding what they need quickly. Time spent on the site shows how long users stay on the portal. Longer durations may indicate that users are engaging with the data, while very short sessions may suggest usability issues. Geographic location of users identifies where users are accessing the portal from, and this helps NSOs understand a data portal's current audience and tailor data offerings to their various audiences. And a source of traffic reveals how users are finding the portal, whether it's through a search engine, a link in a social media post, or a link from another site, or a direct link that they typed in. This helps NSOs determine whether partnerships, promotions, or search optimization efforts are effective in bringing users to the portal. In the next slide, we'll delve deeper into how to make the data portal easier for users to find through search engines. So when someone uses a search engine like Google, Bing, or DuckDuckGo to try to find data on a country, what will pop up first? Will it be an international organization's page showing the high-level data on this? Or will the country's own data portal or NSO website be one of the first things a user sees? Search engine optimization, or SEO, is the process of improving a website's visibility in search engine results pages. And so knowing some basics about how search engines work can reveal opportunities to improve websites for search engine optimization. Please note this is a very high and light touch into all of the details, but I hope it'll provide some good orientation. So starting with crawling. Search engines use automated bots or crawlers to scan web pages and follow links. If a page isn't easily accessible or lacks internal links for the crawlers to follow, it may not be crawled effectively. Next, indexing. Once crawled, pages are stored in a massive database or index, and search engines analyze content, keywords, metadata, and page structure to understand what each page is about. Then for ranking, when a user searches for something, search engines rank relevant pages based on an algorithm that considers hundreds of factors. More relevant, authoritative, and user-friendly pages will rank higher. For retrieval, the search engine retrieves and displays the most relevant pages in search results. Pages with clear content and strong SEO optimizations are more likely to appear on the first page of the results. And then finally, for feedback and continuous learning, search engines constantly refine their algorithms based on user behavior, measured through indicators like click-through rates or time spent on page. And if a page doesn't meet user needs, its ranking may drop over time. In the blue box here, we've shared just a small set of changes that could help optimize a website for search engines. Of course, SEO is a complex process with far more factors than these, so consider these as examples or possibly low-hanging fruit that each of you could pursue depending on your context. Now in the next slide, we'll wrap up our discussion of how to meet user needs by discussing a couple of topics related to increasing accessibility. Ensuring that the Open Data Portal is accessible to all users is a complex and technical subject that involves a wide range of considerations. And here we're going to focus on two that can provide a great deal of utility and benefit: language options and Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. To make data available to its users, the portal should provide multiple language options, including regional dialects. This is particularly important for reaching people in rural and remote areas. The Paris 21 ODW study, Data Dissemination in the Digital Age, found that 60% of portals were available in only one language, which greatly limits its accessibility. Next, the WCAG are a set of standards that make web content more accessible, particularly for people with disabilities. WCAG 2.0 is an ISO international standard. They provide guidelines for making web content more perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. This can involve including alternative text descriptions of graphic content, which involve creating text that describes an image that someone with visual impairment can still experience the content of a page. It involves using clear text styles that are visually perceivable, not relying on color alone to convey important ideas, and choosing the right reading level for an audience. There are many resources online to help test a website's accessibility. One free app available through Google is called Lighthouse, and that can be used to score web pages for their accessibility. The Paris 21 ODW study found that 90% of reviewed portals had Lighthouse scores that indicated they needed improvement. Minor changes and simple efforts can go a long way in this area to make data portals and other websites more accessible to the users that need them. We thank you for your attention on this important topic of how to understand and meet the needs of open data portal users.
Great, thank you, Amelia. And now I'd like to start our last Q&A for the workshop. So if there's any questions that you have yet to ask our panelists, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A. But to start, I do have a couple questions. I have one for Louise and one for Yima. Yima, maybe we'll go ahead and start with you. That's okay. So one question is, just for some countries that have done maybe minimal outreach to users, maybe it's a new part of the work that they have done so far, maybe minimal efforts outside of something, say, like a user satisfaction survey, for instance. What would you recommend as kind of a first step to increasing engagement, or what do you think would be an easier place for some countries to start, given that you're a little bit further into the process of engaging with users in different ways? If you can share some insights for our participants, Yima, that would be great.
Thank you very much. And so for a context like ours, where you have limited access to internet, and also you have a lot of users who are challenged in navigating and understanding how to utilize data sets. One of the things that we have recommended to Statistics Sierra Leone is using radio. Radio remains a very critical media in Sierra Leone because the data shows us that at least 60% to 70% of Sierra Leoneans use radio. So more and more we've been encouraging Statistics Sierra Leone to work with community radios who can be able to support their work through disseminating important data to the communities. So because some of these communities will not have access to the portal, but then for those who will be able to utilize the portal so that they can be able to understand that there's a portal available and they can utilize it to support the important work that they're doing in the communities. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I have never heard a statistical office disseminating information via radio before. So that's a great example of meeting users exactly where they're at. So this is really just highlights the importance of understanding why are people not using your data, and how can you better reach them? So that example really highlights that. So great to hear that, some experiences, and if anyone else has other things that they may be doing in their own countries that they have found particularly helpful to meet users where they're at and tell them about your data, feel free to share that in the chat box. Next, I have a question for Luis. There's been some questions here about standards and interoperability and things like that. Maybe you can just expand a little bit more on standards, best practice standards in terms of integrating for use for AI. And I'm assuming a lot of these have to do with the interoperability standards that has also been asked about in the chat. So if you can expand about what those standards are, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Jameson. I mean, this is a topic that is really important today, which is what types of standards should we support in our platforms to make our data usable by new systems and technologies. And in particular, what my message would be that we as statistical community need to expand our vision in terms of looking not only at the standards that we painstakingly have been developing, like SDMX, DDI, but look at the standards that the communities outside use and need. So metadata standards for cross-domain data integration, which lay the foundation for machine actionability of our data. So these standards provide structured vocabularies and general metadata models that ensure that our data is interpretable not only by humans but also by AI systems. And so I'm thinking of standards like schema.org that support the description of our datasets in a way that allows search engines and AI agents to discover and interpret the data online. The importance of standards related to semantic web technologies, but very much adapted to the core business of statistics, like scores and X-scores, which I put in the chat in one small comment. These are standards that are used to encode taxonomies, code lists, statistical classifications, so things that are really core to the work of statistical data management with clear definitions. So to ensure that machines know when two concepts are equivalent or when the use of the same word in two different scenarios reflects different meanings. This ensures that, I mean, by putting our data in using this standards, putting this data out, we ensure that machines can reason, disambiguate, and enrich the analytic outputs that they produce. Another standard I think it's really important for us is that standards for data catalogs, DCAT being one of them. How to facilitate the discoverability of the data by making the description of the provenance of the characteristics of the files and so on actionable by machines. So the key message, the short answer is we need to continue working on the standards that we know, like DDI and SDMX, but expand the frontier of our work to semantic interoperability standards and other industry standards that our users require.
Thank you, Luis. And we'll be sure to share links to these different standards and all that in our slides as well.
Absolutely.
So one final question, and then I'm going to, that will be towards Amelia, and this is based on one of the questions in the Q&A. And this is about whether or not web analytics can be used to, say, make conclusions about whether or not the data that you're publishing is meeting user needs, right? And so, Amelia, if you can talk about this, and I'm assuming you'll talk a little bit more about the limitations of what Google Analytics can do, and how maybe, qualitative data might also be helpful here as well. So please, I'll pass it to you.
Well, you've almost answered it, but yes. So when web analytics are set up properly, you can really track and see what exactly our users are looking at, how they're navigating the website, and even what data sets are being downloaded. And this is really, really helpful to understand what the current use is. And so, if you see a particular collection of data sets being downloaded and accessed a great deal, those are important data sets, and they should absolutely continue to be collected and perhaps even expanded and improved, more years, more regional disaggregation. But what that can't tell you is what is missing. What data do users need that aren't being provided? And so this is where pairing it with qualitative information is really important. It's really important to engage with the full scope of users that you think should be accessing the data, that need it, and understanding, all right, so what are you currently using and what is missing? And that's why the qualitative and quantitative approach, combining those pieces, is really, really valuable. I hope that answers your question.
Great. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you to all our panelists. Now I'm going to hand it back to Eric, and that will conclude our Q&A, and we will close the session.
Thank you, Jameis, and thank you, Amelia, and thanks again to our experts, Luis and Yema. That was I was learning things as we went along. I really appreciate it. I want to just try to summarize for all of our benefits some of the things that we've discussed today. When Paris 21 and Open Data Watch conducted their study of national data portals, they made some specific recommendations, which you can see on the slide here. And the first was to adopt a back to basics approach, which I think you heard Luis emphasize as well. Sometimes that does mean starting small, recognizing that resources and time and money are limited. So prioritize those features that will have the greatest benefit to your users, both the final data users and also, and I think it's important to mention this, the operational staff who manage the portal itself. In other words, being able to do this efficiently and effectively internally. We've just heard a lot about engaging with users, a user-centric approach. So all the way from the production side to dissemination and understanding what is most valued by your users. A data portal is the face of the national statistical system. So how well it performs and meets users' needs will shape their perception of the statistical agency. I want to emphasize that again. It is the face of your office. It is what people will remember about the national statistics system. National ownership. We emphasize this because it's important for you to have control over the presentation of your statistics, and because you're the ones who are going to be closest to your users, understanding what they need. In many cases, you may be using a portal supported by an external partner, but that portal system, you're still the NSO or the other statistics agencies are the appropriate national body to maintain responsibility and control over the content and the presentation on that portal. And in the long run, a national platform can only be sustained by national resources. Improving upstream functioning, although we've not discussed the infrastructure needed to maintain a data portal, well, perhaps we have a little bit. Luis certainly gave us ideas about that. The sustainability of a data portal depends on the ability of the NSO to manage the flow and the processing of data. So this means in particular, moving from paper to digital methods and adopting standards that facilitate full control of the data pipeline from the source all the way through to the final users. Finally, an all-in-one integrated but modular portal along with streamlined data processes can reduce the overall management burden for the NSO. So the Paris 21 Open Data Watch study found that some countries have 3 or more portals with duplicate content and functions, which increase the cost, the time, and expense of disseminating data. And I should say in passing that you heard Yema talk about this in the particular case of Sierra Leone. It's very confusing when there are multiple portals and you don't know what or where to go or which one is the authoritative one. So there may be a need for multiple portals to address different users' needs, but they should be integrated and interoperable, and as much as possible, interoperable. So that's a kind of quick overview of many of the things that we've talked about, but of course I couldn't encompass all of it. In closing, let me assure you, we will share the slides, we will share the video. We'll add to the slides contact information for the presenters so that you can go directly to them and take advantage of their knowledge and expertise. With that, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of Open Data Watch, and I'd like to let Fariel say a few closing words from the Data for Now initiative.
Thank you so much, Eric, Lewis, Jameson, Emilia, and Yema for your insights. I think just making data portals open or making data open, it's planning at so many levels, at the technical level, strategic level, and also how the capacities needs to be developed at the national statistical offices to expand the knowledge to make the data portals open. And one of the key themes that came up in every presentation or that each speaker presented was understanding what the user needs, not only in terms of the data user needs, but also how to get the feedback from users in order to adapt the data portals that respond to the needs of users. So keeping that feedback loop open is a very critical part of maintaining and ensuring that the data portals remain open and meet the needs of users. Also because, with the evolving landscape, we have to remain, open to feedback so we can respond to the various open sources that are available according to the needs and to meet the needs. So thank you so much, everybody, for also staying with us for this 1.5 hour, and Eric also for waking up very early on your side of the world to facilitate this session as well. As Eric said, we will make this the presentations and the recording available on the Data for Now website. Perhaps I could also share the link in the chat here, but this will be shared also with all of you via email. And we remain available for any questions and hope this helps you in the work moving forward. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of the day, evening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, all.